So with the rabbis Tendler and Heyer and Cooper, were they here when you and Kalman were learning?
Yes, they were. Rabbi Heyer founded the yeshiva with Rabbi Meiselman in 1977, I believe. And I got here in 1981, like I said, when I came back from Israel. But people had been in this yeshiva, Baal Tshuva Yeshiva college program, going to college part-time, some of them, and learning part-time. And some of us lived in the dormitories since 1977, 78. And I knew Kalman in 81, 82. When I got back from Israel, him and Shimon Kraft were already here. And Rabbi Cooper and Rabbi Heyer were the dean and assistant dean of what was called YULA, Yeshiva University of Los Angeles. They had a partnership with Yeshiva University of New York. And when they wouldn't allow us to take a smicha program separate here in LA and demanded that we go and get smicha by spending a year in YU New York. So then they broke off, not the high school from affiliation with Yeshiva University of New York, but it's still called YULA for the high school, Yeshiva University of Los Angeles. But this is in the mid-'80s, 84, 85, I wasn't here anymore. And Kalman was already a couple of years gone. But they called it YOLA, Yeshiva of Los Angeles, and that's where it was, and that's what it was, till the end of the early 90s when the Kolo folded and then the last college program guys were gone, and then it was just a synagogue on the weekends and on Shabbos and every day they learned at night, a night seder, let's say. They had a synagogue here, and on Saturdays and Sundays they had morning services and afternoon services. And the high school was then took over the whole space, and the yeshiva ended in, I think, the early 90s. I was already in New York, and I wasn't around to see its demise, but unfortunately that's what happened. It went the way of the hard-fought wars with the federations and the secular Jews, separation of church and state. They were collecting a lot of money for the Wiesenthal Center, the Holocaust Center, which was originally designed as a way to pay for the yeshiva, and the enemies that we have within our own midst that fought it made the death of YULA Yeshiva a certainty, because he could no longer fund us. And they tried, Rabbi May and other rabbis tried to raise money and did for many years, very arduous work, and they did keep it alive much longer than it should have been maybe alive, and paid for kolo salaries and rabbi salaries, but then it had to fold because of the lack of funds, unfortunately. And nobody came into the breach to undo what the Federation and other powerful reform and conservative rabbis and laity had done to us, demanding separation of church and state. They were just jealous of all the money that Rabbi Heyer was able to raise in this community and get his brand new Museum of Tolerance. All of them are just petty Jews. What can I tell you? These people who fought Rabbi Heyer in the community, whether they're associated with the Federation or they're associated with ADL or B'nai B'rith, or whoever, these are petty. Rabbi Kahane used to call them pygmy Jews. That their lack of knowledge of Jewish concepts, lack of understanding of Jewish values. They wouldn't know a Jewish value if they tripped over one, and that's the fault, and that's their fault, and that's the sadness, because their community outlook has presided over for the 50 years, 60 years of assimilation and intermarriage, and they've done nothing to quell it. They've encouraged it because it keeps them in power, and it keeps them keeping Torah from rising up and taking their positions away from them and making their lives miserable, so to speak. That is given the same thing that they did to their own children and their own communities here as American Jewry, is what they did to the Soviet Jewry, that they wouldn't help them because they didn't want to rock the boat, and what they did in the Holocaust is even more unforgivable, because they presided over these powerful institutions, and they wouldn't do a darn thing to save anybody's life, because they didn't want anti-Semitism here. They didn't want to look too Jewish in the eyes of the Gentiles they were trying to impress and become comrades with, and go to their country clubs and be invited to all their banquets and their hobnob with the rich and famous. And that they'll pay dearly for in the afterlife. They'll be judged for that, because they attempted to destroy. God will never let it be destroyed, the Torah of this community or any community in the world, and they're just on the wrong side of Jewish history. And we're out. Back to you.